The story opens with a chilling prophecy. In 10 years, the Federation Kingdom of the East will be destroyed. The ones responsible will be the 5 great sins, 5 names synonymous with annihilation in this world. A massive explosion of energy erupts, blazing red and gold, signaling a life-or-death battle is already underway. The aftermath is shown in ruins and devastation. The kingdom will fall unless someone steps in to stop it, but there is someone who intends to change that fate. He sits deep in thought at a desk, flipping through documents with a calculating look. He reveals his plan. Rather than eliminating the 5 great sins, he has chosen to become their patron. Behind him stand all 5 of the world's most dangerous individuals. Even he did not expect his plan to snowball into something this massive. He sighs and clasps his hands, brooding alone in the dim room. A grand room comes into view with a sparkling chandelier and towering bookshelves. The soft rustle of paper breaks the silence. Before arriving in this world, the main character was just an overworked nobody putting in 78-hour weeks. Then he transmigrated into the body of a young noble in a fantasy world. The problem is he cannot read a single word and has no special abilities. He even holds a book upside down without realizing it, and a nearby attendant quietly points it out. Either way, the meal is served in full splendor with dish after dish of lavish food. The attendant announces everything is ready, and the young master exclaims in delight. The meal ends with a simple but satisfied comment. When the maid offers to help with his bath, he flushes but clearly does not refuse. The bath turns out extravagant with 2 maids attending at once. He stretches out in the oversized tub, thinking that being a powerless but pampered young master is not a bad deal. This life is a world away from his exhausting days back home. Still, he realizes he has no idea where in this vast world he actually is. The maid reminds him the young masters will return tomorrow and he should sleep early. He blinks and asks who exactly is coming back. The maid smiles and says it is young masters Leo Antonio, then asks why he speaks as if he does not recognize his own family. The name Palacio rings a bell. A strange, creeping sense of familiarity washes over him as though he has heard it somewhere before. Panic sets in as both maids watch in alarm. The young master has plunged his head into the bathwater, bubbles rising rapidly. He shoots upright, face pale, as the terrifying truth dawns on him. He is inside the world of a game called Psychedelia. The name Psychedelia blazes before his eyes, surrounded by powerful figures closing in. This is the world where the 5 great sins will bring everything to ruin. The game flashes before his memory, a handheld console screen showing 2 characters locked in combat, bursting with neon energy. Psychedelia is a turn-based RPG he used to grind whenever he had a spare moment, sitting in the dark surrounded by energy drink cans. No matter which route you chose, the moment the 5 great sins showed up, everything fell apart. Their names are wrath, greed, sloth, pride, and obsession. Once they appear, the kingdom, nobility, cities, basically everything collapses. The royal crest cracks as darkness swallows it whole. Among the noble houses caught in that downfall is the Palacio house. Leo Palacio, eldest son known as the king of prostitutes, Antonio Palacio, second son known as the king of drugs, stand flanking a menacing older figure. The Palacio house is labeled a family of troublemakers in the game's sub-quest before the main story begins. Alan finds himself here, trembling on his knees, muttering that he does know this place after all. Sub-Quest 1 in the game requires investigating the Palacio House of the Asteria Kingdom, a noble family secretly running an organization called Avalon, dealing in prostitution and drug trafficking. The player is given 2 choices, enter or turn back. Standing before the grand estate in real life, Alan stares up at the mansion and mutters in disbelief. He knows what comes next. The Palladios are the first noble house torn apart by the 5 great sins. His name label appears on screen, Alan Palacio, extra villain, 3rd son of the Palacio house. The panic sends him to his knees. He begs desperately, saying he would rather go back to being a 78-hour wage slave than face this. What good is living in luxury when he will die in 10 years? He grips a small blue flower and mutters that this is worse than 6 months of unpaid wages. Why, out of every character to possess, did he end up in one with absolutely no powers while everyone else gets abilities? Then a thought cuts through. Knowing what will happen 10 years from now is basically the same as being a prophet. Something shifts in his expression. The idea crystallizes. If he knows exactly how this world falls apart, why not remove the causes himself? He crushes the blue flower in his fist as the plan takes shape. Alan makes his decision. He will reform the 5 great sins, not out of heroism, but purely to protect his own peaceful, noble life. He reasons that they are still children now, so it should be possible to change their paths. The screen reminds him of his biggest handicap has 0 powers. 2 months pass. Alan is now bent over a desk studying. He narrates that they rescued the orphans from what the East called an orphanage, but was really a human testing center. Management of that orphanage was handed to a girl named Utia. Standing nearby is Evan, Alan's personal knight, a sharp-eyed young man with brown hair and dark armor. Alan tells Evan his eye for talent is sharp, and that Evan really is skilled. Evan responds with a flat acknowledgement. Alan tilts his head and asks if that was actually a compliment, since he cannot read it from Evan's expression. Evan replies that yes, of course it was. Alan tells Evan he looks forward to working together, flashing a forced smile. Evan responds dryly that he does not think he will ever get used to that. Evan notes that Alan used to be really obvious with his emotions, switching between gloomy and bright depending on the moment. Alan stares into a mirror and mutters that he feels like his possession of this body stopped at the face, since the original Alan's stone-cold expression is still stuck on it. Evan thanks Alan for the praise and is introduced as a rare character in psychedelia, one who stays honest and loyal even amid all the betrayals. Alan hired him the moment he found him. Evan asks if this whole operation was really to save the girl named Utia. Alan confirms it with a simple yes, and Evan says he can see why. Even from the eyes of a longtime mercenary, she was no ordinary kid. Flashback. Evan opens a cell door to find several chained children inside, including a white-haired girl slumped on the floor surrounded by dark energy. She was strong enough that Evan could not understand why she simply gave in to being locked up. Alan asks why Evan did not just bring her along, since there is no benefit in keeping her there. Evan pauses and admits Alan is right. Alan explains that it may look like he is neglecting her instead of making use of her, but leaving her like that is actually part of his plan. Her full name is revealed, Utia Blutia, a non-human who signs a contract with an otherworldly being for its powers, and she will go on to become Wrath of the 5 Great Sins, responsible for killing hundreds of thousands of people. But Alan slams his fist down and insists she should not become Wrath if she grows up in peace. He pumps himself up, declaring he finally took care of one landmine. He decides to just make up an excuse when pressed further, clearing his throat awkwardly. Evan gives him a confused look. Alan says firmly that it is not yet time. Evan looks caught off guard and echoes back the same words with a question mark. Evan falls silent, processing it. Alan then gives clear instructions. Keep this quiet. Make sure no one talks about it, and send enough funds to support the orphanage. Evan says he understands, then asks about the letter Alan also hands him. Alan tells him to deliver it to Utia. Evan asks if it is important. Alan says it is just to check how she is doing, since she has been through a lot and he figured he should reassure her somehow. Alan says it is just to check how she is doing, since she has been through a lot, and that he figured he should reassure her somehow. Evan takes the sealed letter and agrees to make sure it gets to her. Evan rides off on horseback while Alan watches from the window, arms crossed, quietly hoping the letter does its job even if he is not sure it will. The real purpose of the letter was not just comfort. Alan filled it with quotes he had heard dozens of times during Utia's story arc in the game. One of those quotes came from the Archbishop in the game who tried to cast a spell to befriend a non-human and calm the sin of Wrath down. The Archbishop commanded Wrath to calm herself, but it was already too late in the game. In the game, Utia's story arc centered on agony in the dark and belonging through her fall. Attempts to stop her always ended in battle. In the game, every effort to calm Wrath failed and the battle began. But Alan tells himself it might not be too late now, since he is 10 years ahead. Alan stretches and mutters to himself. Now that one target is handled, it is time to move on to the next. He reasons that befriending a monster through mere quotes sounds ridiculous, but since Utia worships some god of the otherworld, it might actually work on her. Alan admits those otherworld fanatics are hard to figure out, but that is exactly what he is counting on. Meanwhile, Evan delivers the letter. Utia, a white-haired girl with red eyes and a black dress, stands alone holding the envelope with a completely blank expression. Evan watches her closely and notes to himself that the mana radiating off her is unbelievable. She is a strange child with no visible emotions whatsoever, standing still like a doll holding the letter in both hands. Utia asks flatly whether Mr. Allen was really the one who sent this letter. Evan tenses up, blood starting to trickle from his hand. Dark energy explodes around Utia as she demands to know why Allen did not want her by his side. Evan stutters in shock, barely managing to get a word out as Utia's power surges violently around her. Evan realizes in horror that the mana she's manifesting is only possible at Master Realm level, something no child should be capable of. Allen's words echo in Evan's memory. It is not yet time. Those words hit very differently now that Evan is face to face with this level of power. Evan scrambles and blurts out that Allen specifically said it is not yet time. Utia's dark energy slowly pulls back as she quietly murmurs that she sees. The tension fades as Utia's power recedes. Evan exhales, visibly shaken, realizing just how close things came to going very wrong. Back at the estate, Allen sits calmly unaware of the chaos that just unfolded, still busy planning his next move. Utia reads the letter. It contains the sacred phrase from her god, agony of the dark, impassivity of the bright, belonging with the fall. She smiles softly and murmurs that this is a promise only her master would know, then says she gets it. Evan stands tense nearby, drenched in sweat, hands gripping his weapon as Utia's dark energy swirls just inches away. Utia's power surges under the blood moon as she grins and declares she understands what Allen means. Her title is revealed, Sin of Wrath, Daughter of Monsters, the Bloody Queen Utia. Meanwhile, back at the estate, Allen flops into bed completely unaware and mutters contentedly that he has managed to extend his luxurious lifespan a little. Allen gazes at the moon through his window and murmurs that even the bright moon seems to be cheering him on, then cheerfully tells himself to work hard on the next kid too. A page rustles softly as Allen sits hunched over his desk in the library, exhausted and clearly in the middle of studying. Papers and books are scattered around him. Evan approaches and reports that they have successfully rescued the second child Allen had asked about, while Allen continues searching through a stack of books on the floor. Allen asks if the child was treated kindly during the rescue. Evan assures him she was, explaining the child was saved from an illegal slave market before they could sell her off. Allen rushes forward in a burst of blinding light, moving with urgency towards something important. In the background, a scarred man wearing an eye patch watches him quietly from the shadows, his expression unreadable. Tonio Palacio, the second son of the Palacio family, struts into view with a wide, mocking grin, clearly delighted to run into Allen. Tonio mocks Allen for holding a book, despite supposedly being illiterate, laughing loudly and taunting him about his sudden interest in studying. Tonio grabs Allen and shoves him down, snapping at him to answer properly when his own brother is talking to him. Pinned to the ground, Allen grits his teeth in frustration, silently wondering how the original Allen ever tolerated this kind of treatment, wishing he could fight back but holding himself in check. A calm voice interrupts the scene, saying he will step aside since it looks like Allen wants to use the library. Tonio sneers down at Allen, smugly asking if he has finally learned his place in the family. A hidden knife glints sharply, lodged deep in the wooden floor, a quiet but ominous hint that violence is closer than anyone realizes. A sharp, commanding voice cuts through the room, warning that the insects are being far too noisy, catching Tonio completely off guard. Leo Palacio, the eldest son, and the one wearing the eye patch, steps forward with a cold expression, stating flatly that he does not want to see blood first thing in the morning and ordering them to get lost. Tonio fires back at Leo, accusing him of reeking of drugs and telling him to drop his arrogant attitude before entering the library, the tension between the two brothers escalating into a heated, dangerous standoff. A narration box explains that the Palacio County vanished quickly within the game's storyline, while Allen privately admits to himself that their actual power is far greater than he had assumed. The truth behind the conflict is laid bare. These two corrupt brothers are locked in a bitter struggle over who will inherit the position of family head. Leo is revealed in his true form as the underworld's notorious prostitution king, shown lounging in luxury surrounded by beautiful women in a lavish, decadent setting. Tanio is revealed as the drug king, the manager of a massive drug cartel, shown surrounded by crates and sacks of smuggled narcotics with a cigarette dangling from his lips. Caught helplessly between the two of them, Alan panics internally, telling himself he absolutely cannot risk losing these two precious fingers just to survive whatever happens next. The standoff finally erupts into a massive, blinding explosion of energy, the shockwave tearing through the room and shaking everything around them violently. Leo ruffles Alan's hair almost affectionately while declaring that Alan is going to live out his life happily as a weak, incompetent bastard child, the comment carrying a strange mix of mockery and protectiveness. Tonio is sent sprawling to the ground with a pained grunt, and as he lies there he begrudgingly admits to himself that the third child does not seem ordinary either. Alan lies dazed on the floor, confused and uncertain about what just happened, while the man who intervened stands silently with his back turned, saying nothing more. Lost in thought, the scarred man wonders how someone like Alan could possibly have found out about the illegal slave market and the secret bio-experiments happening in another region entirely. Utterly baffled by how he managed it, watching from a distance, he notes to himself that Alan seems to be struggling to hold himself together, observing the boy with a mix of curiosity and concern. Evan reports to Alan that he is acting quite strange, adding bluntly that he went ahead and sent the rescued child to the orphanage as instructed. Alan immediately questions whether Evan really meant that the child did not seem like an ordinary person, his suspicion clearly piqued by the description. Alan corrects himself internally, realizing the boy is not just unusual but operates on an entirely different, almost catastrophic level of significance. The story shifts to introduce the setting, explaining that this is a unified kingdom made up of several smaller nations, with the Kalien kingdom serving as its central power. It is revealed that the child rescued from the illegal slave market was none other than Deus Makalian, who would go on to become the second boss in the game Psychedelia. After enduring years of being sold into slavery and passed from one abuser to another, Theos eventually became the living embodiment of one of the 5 great sins, taking on the title of the Sin of Sloth. Once that transformation was complete, he went on to annihilate entire kingdoms in some of the most horrific and merciless ways imaginable, sparing no one in his path. The devastation he caused was so extreme that this part of the story became infamous among players, many of whom were genuinely shocked by just how cruel the game was willing to get. Back in the present, Alan explains that despite his title as the Sin of Sloth, Deus was actually known for being remarkably hardworking, the kind of person who repaid every debt and wrong done to him many times over, which is exactly why Alan stressed to Evan that he needed to be treated with real kindness. Evan sips his tea while muttering under his breath that the details Alan just shared are far too graphic for casual conversation. Evan asks directly why Alan chose to send the boy to the orphanage instead of keeping him close, to which Alan simply replies that the timing is not right yet. Evan takes another sip of his drink and says he figured as much, then moves on to ask whether the letter Alan sent to Utia was actually about this second child. The contents of the letter are shown a casual note where Alan jokingly mentions his brother using him as a chair, asks if Utia is doing okay, and lets her know about the child he is sending her way, ending with Utia's reply of a simple yeah, along with some added small talk. Alan explains that he told Utia to look after the slightly sick child he was sending to her, setting up the introduction as gently as possible. A wide, peaceful shot shows Deus walking quietly down a path while 2 cheerful strangers run past him in the sunny countryside, completely unaware of who he really is. A cold, otherworldly voice tells Deus flatly that he is broken, the words cutting through the quiet night as he stands alone in the darkness. A scarred, blackened hand is shown trembling, with the voice noting that these marks are traces left behind by something ominous referred to only as that. Deus turns and asks quietly if it was the black goat responsible, his expression hollow and resigned as he stares into the night. A mysterious white-haired woman with a Cheshire grin appears, telling Deus that despite everything, the great moon has still chosen him and congratulating him on it. She reaches out toward him, urging him to feel the power he has been given and let his true potential finally be unleashed, energy swirling violently around them both. She tells him that if he stays loyal and follows her order, he shall have his revenge, the promise wrapping around him like a dark vow. Energy explodes outward in a massive surge as Deus is consumed by the power being granted to him, swept up into a swirling storm of light and shadow. The mysterious woman floats above Deus with an unsettling smile, casually saying that now she should send her first reply, treating the whole moment as routine business. A letter is shown in close detail, Alan's casual note to Yusha asking how she is doing, joking about his brother using him as a chair, and mentioning the child he sent her way. The scene shifts to a quiet exterior shot of a grand estate, its rooftops and chimneys rising peacefully under a soft blue sky. Back in the present, Alan groans from behind a stack of books, frustrated and wondering aloud just where in the world the third boss could possibly be hiding. Tonio bursts into the room with his arms thrown wide, dramatically shouting that there is big trouble brewing. Evan looks visibly alarmed as he corrects himself mid-sentence, starting to call him scum before quickly catching himself and referring to him properly as the second young master. Alan reacts sharply with a surprised what, clearly caught off guard by whatever news is about to be delivered to him. A dramatic reveal unfolds as someone asks in shock whether that scum is truly dead already, the words echoing with disbelief over the unexpected death. A blood-spattered young man is shown standing amid wreckage, looking around himself almost in disbelief at what he has just done. An overhead funeral scene is laid out, showing a casket surrounded by flowers and mourners gathered solemnly around the body on display. Two flashy noblewomen flank an old bearded lord, one of them calling out cheerfully to him as if the funeral were nothing more than a social gathering. The women complain about being bored and hungry right there at the funeral, prompting Alan to silently judge the family as completely shameless for bringing drugs and women to a funeral, muttering that he always knew this family was messed up but never expected something this dark and twisted. Alan looks down at Tonio's body resting peacefully among blue flowers in the casket, quietly remarking that something about this accidental fall death does not match what he remembers from the game's original story. A sinister figure leans close with a wide grin, warning Alan to at least try to hide his emotion, since the culprit behind Tonio's death must be either Leo or one of his loyal followers. Alan stands beside the casket with arms crossed, muttering to himself that anyway, all he really has to do now is resolve the remaining 5 deadly sins. A time skip is marked as a year later, with a peaceful sunset shot of the Grand Estate, explaining that once the successor problem was settled and Leo absorbed the drug business, the entire county grew even more peaceful. Alan and Evan are shown relaxing together in a cozy tea room, surrounded by sweets and letters, enjoying what looks like a quiet, comfortable routine. A narration box reveals that in the meantime, Alan and Utia have become regular pen pals, with Alan privately admitting that staying in touch with her will likely prove useful down the line. A handwritten letter from Utia is shown cheerfully describing how Yuna excels at hide and seek. Haydn is great at war games and Deus continues growing up without any trouble while enjoying puppeteering, prompting Alan to smile and remark that they sound like good kids when you look at them this way. Evan mentions that the sponsorship list for the orphanage has grown again, noting it is interesting how more donors keep showing interest in such a small charity. Evan adds that it is unusual but still a good thing nonetheless. Casually munching on snacks while flipping through papers, Evan shifts topics, telling Alan that regarding the thing he has been searching for, he received word from the Information Guild saying they finally found a clue. Alan reacts with visible relief, saying that's a relief, and excitedly thinking to himself that he will finally get to find that person as well, assuming it must be an ancient book related to the third boss. A peaceful evening scene unfolds in the grand sitting room, with Alan and Evan relaxing quietly, both content that everything seems to be going smoothly so far. The scene shifts abruptly to a brutal scream of pain, a dark, shadowy figure shown mid-attack, blood splattering violently across the ground in a sudden burst of violence. A caption marks the location as the drug distribution site called Margot, where 2 men dressed in black calmly discuss how generous Leo the eldest of the Palacio family has been, mentioning that their organization now boasts a few hundred loyal members thanks to his rewards. One of the men says just a bit more under his breath right before being interrupted by something off-screen, his shocked exclamation suggesting an unseen threat has suddenly appeared. Chaos erupts as people scream that their hand is moving on its own, clearly losing control of their own bodies in pure terror and confusion. A panic figure cries out for help as deadly energy crackles around a chilling, masked face looking down with cold indifference at the unfolding slaughter. Another agonized scream tears through the rain-soaked night as a massive surge of pink energy slices violently through the scene, leaving destruction in its wake. A lone hooded figure stands silently in the rain as another desperate cry for help rings out nearby, blood soaking into the wet stone ground around fallen bodies. The mysterious, white-haired entity comments mockingly that she enjoyed the puppet show of the day, adding that it seems there is more to report after all. Standing close behind the hooded figure, she asks bluntly whether there is even any point in continuing to do this, her tone carrying both curiosity and quiet menace. Surveying the scattered bodies left behind, the white-haired woman asks Thais mockingly if he pities them, to which he replies coldly that he does not, explaining it is only because they were grinding people into drugs. Then quietly admits he is not even sure this slaughter has anything to do with his revenge at all. She reassures him that of course it helps, explaining that this destruction lays the basis to create space for someone important to eventually return. Two ominous figures discuss preparations, one excitedly insisting they cannot let the place look shabby once he arrives, while the other simply responds with quiet acknowledgement, accepting the instruction. A massive burst of pink and violet energy collides and erupts violently, tearing through the surrounding structures in a blinding explosion of magical force. Diaz and the mysterious woman float together above the devastation under a crescent moon, with a narration declaring that everything happening now will proceed entirely according to his will. The explosion grows even larger and more intense, swallowing entire buildings in a brilliant wave of purple and white light that rips across the cityscape. A chilling declaration rings out under the crescent moon, proclaiming that they, calling themselves the Blue Moon, shall serve as his sword going forward. The aftermath reveals a massive crater scarred into the ground, a strange circular void left behind at the center of the ruined, devastated area, hinting at something far greater stirring beneath the surface. 2 years have passed since Alan started exchanging letters with Utia. Someone is stumbling through the halls in a panic, desperately searching for Alan. Yvonne finds Alan in the backyard and reports back breathlessly that he just returned. Eben gives a thumbs up and cheerfully confirms that the 5th child has been safely delivered to the orphanage. Alan is visibly caught off guard by the news. In that same span of time, all 3 of the remaining sons were also brought to safety. Alan hands Yevon a piece of cake and tells him to eat up. Yevon accepts with a muffled thank you, already chewing before he finishes the sentence. Alan narrates that tracking down the sin of greed was the hardest one yet. What finally cracked it open was his knowledge of the game and running Yvonne completely into the ground. Alan tells Yevon he has worked hard enough and can rest for now. Yevon asks casually whether the orphanage mission is finally wrapped up. Alan confirms it simply, then quietly adds that he is relieved. Yevon asks if Alan is actually happy. Alan says he is. Yevon looks at him and deadpans that he really does not look it at all. Alan says he is smiling right now. The panel zooms in to catch the faintest, barely there curl at the corner of his lips. Alan flops onto the grass and murmurs to himself that things went better than he expected and are going surprisingly smoothly. A title card cuts in, The Bosses of Psychedelia. 2 brutal flashback images appear side by side showing just how broken these children were before Alan found them. All 5 of them became the great sons only after going through what the game called a tragic past. Even though Alan arrived before any of that happened, the window to save all 5 of them cleanly before the tragedies took hold was always going to be razor thin. What Alan had been dreading most was reaching them only after they were already completely broken. Somehow, against the odds, he got there in time. Alan asks Yevon how the orphanage is doing. Yevon hands him a letter and says everything is running smoothly as usual. The children who were hollow and broken when they first arrived have slowly started to come back to life. Yvonne notes the kids have brightened up quite a bit. Alan reads through the letter and figures they will not need to hire any extra caretakers then. Alan admits he did not expect Utia to manage the orphanage this well, then wonders if it has something to do with her in-game trait of being deeply attached to the orphanage. He adds under his breath that she would absolutely hate anyone trying to interfere with it. Alan remarks that when you look at it this way, Utia is actually a good kid too. Iban leans in and asks if there is anything special in the letter. Utia's letter says everyone is doing well. A few of the children are growing up splendidly. There is no need to worry about Deus anymore, and the new children Alan sent are just fine too. Alan says he is glad and that it feels good seeing all the kids growing up properly. He thinks to himself that all 5 sens are developing normally, and that the environment really does matter. He even asks when Alan plans to meet them, pointing out that he always said there would be a time for that. Alan hesitates and says, that. Alan drops the bombshell. He actually has no intention of meeting them in person. Yvonne stares at him in complete confusion. Alan admits getting closer to them would be good in many ways, but because the process of becoming a sin is so horrific and tragic, their personalities as shown in the game flashbacks were already terrifying even as kids. He saved them before they awakened, so it should be better now, but still the thought alone is scary enough to make him hesitate. Alan mutters that maybe 5 years from now would be fine. Yepin simply says he sees, clearly not fully buying it. Alan declares that from now on, living in this dark fantasy world means all he needs is a bit of self-defense skill. He proudly notes that magic requires talent, and he just happens to have it. Mid-practice, Yeban cuts in and asks if Alan has ever heard of Blue Moon. Alan says he has no idea what that is. Yibin explains they are a group that has been making waves recently by hunting down criminal organizations. Alan calls it good work, like cleaning up trash. Then adds casually that since it is not part of the game's setting, he knows they will probably disappear on their own soon enough. Iban adds that apparently Blue Moon has even killed nobles before, then says with a grin that is exactly why he thought Alan might know something about them. Alan's magic fizzles out completely. Yibin watches and tells him that from today on he will be sleeping in the room next to Alan's. The scene shifts to a building at night, where Blue Moon's weekly meeting is about to begin. Utia sits alone, red eyes calm and unreadable, and asks simply, "The North?" The Beastkin girl with blonde hair and fox ears grins and says she took care of everything. She announces cheerfully that she brought back the slave traders' heads. Her name tag appears, the Sin of Pride, Seolong. Solang flips through the air and boasts that they did not even find out who she was. She gushes about the outfit Rhine made for her, then laughs that she told them she would spare anyone who guessed her eye color, but no one got it right. Another member, Rhine, the Sin of Greed, reports that all bodies were buried cleanly. Rhine adds that the South is done too. A white-haired boy with glowing eyes sits relaxed on the stairs nearby. He reports that the illegal human experiment labs and that annoying organization called Avalon were both shredded without a trace. Redan, the Sin of Purity, grins as he cracks his knuckles. Redan grins as he cracks his knuckles. His name tag confirms it, the Sin of Purity, Redan. Utia says quietly that everything proceeds according to his will. She adds that Blue Moon exists for the glory of the Great Moon, and all 5 members are shown gathered together in the dim room. However, a problem has arisen. Utia frowns and asks what could possibly be a problem when everything under his will is supposed to be perfect. It turns out the head of Avalon is the Count's eldest son. During the Southern Purge, a dangerous document was discovered, and it seems the Count's eldest son is plotting against him. Utia's eyes go cold. She asks simply, "What?" Radan and another member confirm it. The mood in the room shifts immediately. Xialang and Rhine both tense up at the news. The document reveals an instruction: after the ailing Count dies quietly, eliminate him through poisoning. Utia's energy flares as she grits her teeth and says, "Truly, you are right." 2 years later, Count Palacio is dead. Alan and Yevon stand at the funeral in silence. The official cause of death was listed as cardiac arrest. Alan stands over the open casket and thinks that, given the Count's drug abuse right up until the end, it is pretty obvious what really happened. Then he hears the name Blue Moon come up again and mutters in surprise. Someone reports that Blue Moon ambushed during the night. Another person asks flatly if it was another total annihilation. Alan thinks to himself that it seems people are starting to take Blue Moon more seriously now. The Count's funeral ends quietly with no one mourning him. Alan walks away from the funeral with Yvonne. Someone watches them leave from a distance, expression unreadable. Yaban asks what Alan plans to do now, noting that by next year the eldest son, the so-called commoner, will inherit the title. Alan is already crouched on the floor surrounded by packed luggage and tells Yeben simply to pack too. Alan tells Yeben bluntly that they are leaving. Yaban stares at him in disbelief and asks if he is seriously leaving the estate. Alan clarifies they are not leaving for good, just heading south. Yeben sits there confused with question marks floating around him. Yaban asks if south means Rogmill. Alan does not deny it. Alan confirms he planned to move to a small village in the southern part of the Palacio territory called Rod Mill, and they head out by carriage. Someone watches from a balcony as the carriage departs, gripping the railing with visible tension. Alan is cooking toast on a pan in the kitchen of what appears to be their new place in Rod Mill. Alan flips the toast while Yaban bounces in, cheerfully carrying jars of juice. A caption reads, 3 days later. 3 days after arriving in Rodmill, Alan is summoned back to the Count's mansion. He grabs his head in disbelief, asking what now? Another funeral for the first son. Alan mutters that he cannot believe he is back in this blood-soaked place, then wonders why the death flags are all different this time and why Leo is already dead. Alan looks down at Leo lying in the casket, his heart pierced by a blade. Alan wonders to himself who could possibly have killed Leo. Alan tries to ask about the cause of death, but a nearby guard suddenly screams and lunges at him with glowing red eyes, clearly under some kind of influence. The guard snaps back to his senses, trembling and apologizing frantically for making eye contact. His colleague drags him away in a panic. Alan looks around at the chaos unfolding in the hall and mutters in confusion, asking what is wrong with everyone all of a sudden. The servants and guards part in a hurry as Yeben approaches and calls out to Alan. Alan turns and asks Yeben if he found anything. Yeben replies that yes about that. Yeben leans in and asks quietly whether it could be that Alan was the one who wiped out Avalon overnight. Alan goes silent for a moment, then says, "Huh," as if he has no idea what Yeben is talking about. The people around them are whispering and stealing glances at Alan, clearly stirred up by something they have heard about him. Yaban leans closer and asks in a low voice whether Alan is really the one who took down Avalon in a single night. The story flashes back to the day Alan left for Lodmel, a carriage rolling down a sunlit road as golden leaves drift through the warm evening air. Yaban asks whether a city might have been a smarter choice. Alan responds with a quiet, keeping his eyes forward. Alan shoots back without hesitation, absolutely not. Logmeal is the final destination of his plan, and he is not changing course. He narrates that he has already saved the 5 great Sens from their tragic fates and prevented the future where the world is destroyed. A warm scene unfolds in a sunlit garden where children run and laugh freely, while Alan and the others sit together on a picnic blanket surrounded by food and tea. Alan thinks to himself that Lod Mill has no connection to the original game story at all, and that it even has a Palacio family villa there. He decides it is the perfect place to live out a comfortable, leisurely, noble life, the sweet life he has been working toward this whole time. Yaban says he is not buying the excuse this time, pointing out that Alan always deflects with vague reasoning when something is bothering him. Alan says there is a reason for everything. Alan clears his throat and tells Yeben to just let it go. Yeben stares at him, unimpressed, quietly noting that the man is sharper than he lets on. The carriage rolls through the estate grounds from above, someone watching in silence with clasped hands resting on a railing. The watcher is revealed to be Leo, staring down at the departing carriage with a cold expression and muttering to himself whether he should just kill Alan or not. He reasons that Alan is useless either way, then admits he seriously considered poisoning him after their father died. But since Alan is quietly removing himself to the frontier on his own, Leo decides there is no reason to bother. A subordinate stands nearby in shadow, listening. Leo lets out a low moff and mutters that maybe his temper is fraying because things with Avalon have not been going well lately. He pauses, then concludes that Alan is simply annoying, his hand tightening on the railing as the carriage disappears from view. Leo turns and addresses his subordinate by name Alman. He gives a single, quiet order to follow the carriage. Alman, Leo's right-hand man, looks up and asks directly whether that means Leo wants him to kill Alan. Leo turns with an unreadable expression and says simply, "What?" His tone carries no heat, just cold stillness. Alman is someone who carries out any order without question or complaint. His loyalty to Leo absolute and unquestioning. Leo stares at him with narrowed eyes, and Alman stands expressionless in the dim hallway, quietly wondering why Leo is suddenly asking a question instead of giving an order. Leo cuts him off and tells Alman coldly that his job is simply to do as he is told. Before Leo can finish his sentence, Alman drives a blade into him, sending him crashing to the ground with a brutal strike. Leo chokes out a stunned "you" as Alman stands over him with a bloodied sword, and Leo gasps that he dared to betray him. Alman says calmly that he happens to enjoy war games, his expression completely blank and unbothered. He adds that it has been quite fun until now. His name tag confirms it, Alman, Leo's right-hand man. Below it, another tag appears, Haydn, member of the Blue Moon organization. Haydn recites the creed of Blue Moon, taught to them by the Red Moon. The Blue Moon is his sword, and they move only as he wields it. But if someone tries to harm the Great Moon, Haydn's eyes glow with cold intensity as he presses the blade closer. He drives the sword through, and Leo cries out as blood sprays across the balcony. Haydn finishes. In that case, they are permitted to act on their own. Haydn tells Leo he waited 2 whole years just to hear him give the order to harm the Great Moon's servant. Leo slumps to the ground, bloodied and struggling to breathe. Leo snarls that his men will not let Haydn walk away from this. Haydn turns his back and replies quietly that with those words, Avalon will disappear from the continent forever. Haydn glances back with a thin smile and says simply, "It is a pity." Under a crescent moon and a deep blue sky, Haydn tells Leo that the Great Moon gave him a chance. Leo's silhouette burns away in the night air as his time runs out. The scene shifts to Laudmill at sunrise, and Allan bolts upright in bed with a cheerful good morning. Laudmill truly was paradise. He stretches in his sunny room and narrates, waking up whenever he wanted. Sitting across from Yaban at the breakfast table, both of them munching on toast, eating whenever he wanted. Allan chews contentedly and thinks to himself that he could finally enjoy the life of a true noble. He even wonders aloud whether he should start a toast business. Mid-breakfast, Yevon holds up a sealed letter and announces that a telegram has arrived. Allan looks up with a quiet, Allan takes the letter and flips it open, asking what it is. The message reads, "Following the death of Leo Palacio, the return of Allan Palacio is requested." Allan stares at it, hollow-faced, fork still in hand. And just like that, the Paradise Free trial ended in 3 days. Allan and Yevon arrive back at the Palacio estate, where Leo lies in an open casket surrounded by maids and white flowers. Allan narrates that he had returned once again to the Palacio estate. The servants and staff at the estate scramble in panic at Allan's arrival, and Allan stares at the chaos bewildered, wondering why everyone is reacting like this. Yevon pulls Allan aside and asks in disbelief, since when was he the mastermind who destroyed Avalon? Allan just blinks, completely lost. Allan processes it and mutters to himself that he has basically been dropped into a simulation of nothing but insane situations back to back. Allan slumps against the wall in the corridor and says, "Hey," turning to Yevon beside him with a dead look. Allan asks Yevon to explain, in plain terms he can actually understand, how exactly he has ended up being labeled the mastermind. Yevon explains. Allan is the only one who stands to gain from all this. Leo was murdered right after they left the mansion, giving Allan a perfect alibi and making him the heir. The implication hits Allan all at once, and his expression goes blank, purple energy crackling faintly around him as the full weight of it sinks in. Yevon continues, with Avalon gone, there is no one left to cause trouble over Leo's death. Allan sits frozen like a block of ice while Yevon delivers the conclusion, and just like that, Allan has become the mastermind of the entire county, with a sword master-level assassin apparently under his command. Yevon spreads his hands with a grin and asks if Allan is having fun. Allan holds his head in his hands and mutters he does not even know where to begin. He thinks to himself that no organization should be capable of taking down an underworld boss that fast. Allan turns to Yevon and asks if he mentioned an organization that hunts other organizations. Yevon asks if he means Blue Moon. Yevon says the Information Guild reported it as unlikely to be Blue Moon, his expression calm but slightly uneasy. even explains that Blue Moon never leaves bodies behind, only a signature mark, but Avalon's members were all killed by swords. The scene shows the Avalon site, red slashes scarring the ruined ground in every direction. Witnesses said it looks straight out of hell. Alan exhales slowly and mutters, so that is why he is being called the mastermind with a sword master. Alan thinks to himself that Blue Moon did not even exist in the game, so there is no way some group that vanishes before the main story begins could be the culprit. He stares down quietly and asks, then who the hell was it? The scene cuts to a dim room, where Utia, now in a pink dress and black jacket, stands with her white hair loose, asking her members flatly whether there are any traces. Rhine, a green-haired girl in a dark uniform with glowing green energy around her, reports quietly that they left none. So Long spins in cheerfully with her golden scythe and shouts me too, her cat ears perked up with visible excitement. So Lang grins with her weapon in hand and announces there were just lots and lots of bodies, her yellow eyes glowing with pure delight. A purple-caped figure descends into a swirl of violet energy and butterfly light, announcing they have arrived. Remaining Avalon forces, 486 men. The purple-caped member says calmly that just as the boss ordered, they carried out the mission alongside a scarred man whose blade crackles with purple energy. He states simply that they cut them all in half. The white-haired boy grins as he rests a massive sword over his shoulder, blue eyes sharp and satisfied. Uchiha listens with glowing red eyes and says, "Good, then perfect," a slow smile spreading across her face as crimson light bathes the room around her. Avalon, the massive organization that once held sway over the Asteria Kingdom, was wiped out in just 5 days and turned to dust. Uchiha tells the white-haired boy that the cleanup does not seem completely finished, and he turns to face her, asking what she means. He hands over a sealed file and reports that more nobles connected to Avalon have been found. He adds that the Altea Duchy appears to be especially deeply involved. A dark illustration shows a group of faceless figures gathered under the duchy's crest, their identities hidden in shadow. Uchiha goes silent for a moment, staring down at the file with an unreadable expression, red light glowing faintly around her. She looks up with calm red eyes and tells him, "You already know what I am going to say, do you not?" Dark energy pulses around her as she holds the file open. The scene splits into 3 panels showing Seolang crackling with golden lightning, Radan in purple energy, and Rhine standing composed in green light, all 3 ready to move. Radan grins and hoists his great sword onto his shoulder, saying simply, "Let's take care of it quietly." Uchiha stands with her eyes closed, breathing out softly as if she has just finished delivering a long string of instructions. She looks up at the green-haired girl across from her and asks one last thing, whether the Information Guild has been kept completely clean. Rhine confirms it, explaining that the guild is being treated as having nothing to do with Blue Moon at all. Radan adds that every guild is sticking to the same story, calling the massacre the hell created by the Swordmaster, then asks whether they should keep watching the situation. Uchiha tells them to keep the surveillance going, and reminds everyone firmly that this matter must never reach that person, no matter what. Radan brings up that the target's blood relative had tried to move against him first, pointing out that this particular job was never actually ordered by anyone. Uchiha cuts in coldly, declaring that they are a sword and a sword has no business thinking for itself. Under the crescent moon, she repeats that Blue Moon only moves when commanded, telling them to remember well that the person they serve already knows everything. The 4 of them stand together in silence, listening as she warns them never to disappoint that person. Alone afterward, Radan can only admit to himself that he cannot fully understand someone with power as overwhelming as Uchiha's. Uchiha lets out a quiet breath, admitting to herself how strange it feels to be anxious just over the thought of being found out. Holding the file close, she simply says that she understands and accepts it. Under a starlit sky above the quiet orphanage, the narration repeats that everything that happens is done for the sake of the great moon, the one she answers to. The scene shifts abruptly to Alan collapsed face down on his desk, groaning that he truly cannot take any more of this. A narration box explains that after the funeral, he has been buried in work for an entire month straight, and he mutters that all he wants is to relax and live off his fortune like a proper noble should. He reflects bitterly that Leo's death was supposed to come 6 years later, and with both brothers gone early, running the family now falls on him. A knock interrupts him as a line of elderly officials shuffle in carrying stacks of documents, addressing him nervously as the young count, while he can only sigh. Alan wonders aloud why everyone is suddenly working themselves to the bone, recalling that under the old count they used to take it easy and cut every corner they could. Two of the officials tremble before him, whispering nervously to each other about whether he is angry and insisting they need to work even harder so they do not end up getting killed. He thinks to himself that the vassals are probably overworking out of fear over the rumors painting him as some criminal mastermind, sighing that he just wishes people would learn to handle things on their own. Embers crackle and burst as something roasts over an open fire, and a voice calls out to the young master from somewhere nearby. Alan's mentor figure sits lighting his pipe and admits he is genuinely surprised by what he has just witnessed. He marvels that reaching the second tier through only 2 years of self-study is a remarkable display of talent, even joking about when exactly Alan grew so capable. He explains that normally it takes about 4 years of training to reach the second tier, and that magic cannot even be used at all unless someone is born with the gift for it. Alan shrugs it off with a flat, admitting he supposes he is somewhat talented after all. He thinks to himself that he only trained this hard in self-defense because his constant anxiety pushed him to it. A new spell takes shape around him as he notes that this particular technique demands extremely precise control over his mana. He wonders privately what the point even is if his ability stays only half developed instead of pushing it further. Alan reflects in surprise that he never expected to actually end up using real magic in a fantasy world like this one. Blowing energy gathers in his palm as he tells himself that once his plan is complete, there will be no real danger left, so he can simply keep teaching himself at his own pace. A stretch of dark street panels marks a pause, hinting that something heavier is about to be revealed. He admits that with his own survival becoming a real concern lately, he has finally come to understand an uncomfortable truth about himself. He shouts in frustration that his mana hole is insanely small, the small failed spell fizzling out uselessly in his hand. Slumped by the fireplace with his mentor watching from the side, he groans that nothing about his training seems to be working out. A narrator explains that the size of the mana hole someone is born with works much like an athlete's body type, fixed permanently from birth. Alan stands in a martial arts uniform, comparing himself silently to a glowing silhouette as he admits that his own mana hole is, in his words, quite a bit. He finishes the thought bluntly with a single word, calling his own mana hole simply small. Back in the present, the scarred mentor flips open an envelope and remarks happily that this is exactly what he was thinking of, since a dance invitation has finally arrived for the young master too. Alan tilts his head in confusion, repeating the words "dance party" as if trying to process what he has just heard. The next panel opens on a grand, glittering ballroom filled with elegantly dressed nobles mingling beneath the sparkling chandelier as the event gets underway. A grand ball opens in the southern region of Asteria Kingdom, a regular gathering meant for nobles to network with one another. Alan adjusts his collar and thinks that since he is about to become count soon, this might be the perfect chance to build some useful connections, prompting Evan to ask what exactly he is doing. He reminds himself that networking with nobles is crucial for his peaceful future, but his thought trails off the moment he and Evan notice the silence around them. A nearby noble flinches and yelps in shock the instant he realizes Alan and Evan have walked up close to him. The two of them watch in silence as a trio of nobles strides straight past without acknowledging them at all. Evan tries to laugh it off, telling Alan not to take it too hard and not to get upset, though he coughs awkwardly while saying it, and Alan flatly insists he is not upset in the slightest. Alan admits to himself that he honestly expected this much, then tells Evan he will step away for a bit and be right back, leaving Evan to ask if that is really how it is going to be. Bracing himself, Alan admits he already knows he will likely be ignored here for lacking proper noble dignity, while Evan watches him go looking faintly puzzled. He reflects bitterly that unlike his celebrated great-grandfather, the current head of the Palatial name is regarded as nothing but the black sheep of the East. Still, he reminds himself that he did not come to this party completely unprepared, resolving to turn the situation around using the social skills he has secretly been practicing. He approaches a noblewoman holding a glass of wine and remarks that its taste feels truly unique. Forcing on a gentle smile, he adds that the aroma in particular seems remarkably distinctive. He goes on to say he would love to have a few bottles sent to his home, reminding himself that keeping a warm smile is essential for proper socializing. The woman stammers out that she will, clearly flustered by the request. She blurts out that she will speak with her father and have it prepared right away, leaving Alan startled as he tries to stop her and say that is not what he meant. He stands frozen, wondering if that wasn't the wine he meant, while bystanders whisper that he basically threatened her into handing over a rare wine, muttering he's turning out worse than his brothers. Watching nearby, Evan laughs that she must just be an unusually shy young lady, clearly choosing to deny what he actually just witnessed. Onlookers gasp under the glittering chandelier light, someone remarking in awe that his haul just keeps growing. Evan reels off the growing list of gifts with relish, calling it an impressive haul, while Alan slumps against the wall, muttering that he studied up on wine for nothing. He realizes the Palacio name carries far more infamy than he expected, since rumors already claim he murdered his own scoundrel brothers. Watching the crowd keep its distance, Alan mutters that he seems to have become a person everyone avoids, admitting bitterly that so much for his networking plans. He tells Evan he is going to step outside for some air, and Evan simply replies, "Okay," while munching on food nearby. A striking red-haired noblewoman sips her wine thoughtfully on the balcony, murmuring a quiet hymn as if something has caught her attention. Out on the balcony alone, Alan lets out a tired sigh under the night sky. He wonders to himself where exactly everything went wrong, right before a polite voice interrupts to ask if she may speak with him for a moment. Startled, he glances back, wondering if someone really just spoke to him and who it could possibly be. He turns toward the sound, only to find a closed door behind him with no one in sight, leaving him to mutter a confused question to himself. A girl introduces herself as Loria, the third daughter of the Altea ducal house, while Alan reacts with visible surprise at the name. He echoes the name Altea under his breath, forcing out an awkward greeting as the name clearly registers with him. A narration explains that the Altea family is one of the 3 great villain houses in Psychedelia, known as the Black Sheep of the North. He reasons to himself that anyone who would willingly approach him could hardly be an ordinary person. He frowns inwardly, confused about why he cannot recall this girl at all from what he remembers of the game. Loria steels herself and declares she will get straight to the point with him. She asks him directly to lend her his strength, her expression deadly serious in the moment. She adds quietly that she will return the favor soon enough, her face mostly hidden beneath her hair. She finishes her request bluntly, asking him to help her get assassinated, the words hanging heavy over the quiet moonlit estate.